Hi, everyone. I'm Rena Ninan. Thank you for joining us. Roger Stone, the convicted longtime ally of President Trump, has been sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. He was found guilty of 7 felonies, including lying to investigators under oath and witness tampering. The former Trump campaign advisor originally faced a recommended sentence of 7 to 9 years. President Trump called it unfair. That sparked more than a week of controversy. Attorney General William Barr intervened, and the Justice Department reduced Stone's recommended sentence. Set off accusations that the president influenced Barr. For more, I want to bring in Jeff Pegues outside the courtroom, as well as Daniel Lippman and Olivia Gazis. Jeff's our CBS Justice and Homeland Security correspondent. Daniel's a White House reporter for Politico, and Olivia is a CBS News intelligence and national security reporter. So, Jeff, give us a sense of what it was like inside the courtroom. How did Stone react to this?
Well, we didn't see any visible reaction. He was subdued, perhaps more subdued than we're used to seeing Roger Stone, certainly when he's not in a courtroom. But this was a long sentencing hearing and extraordinary in so many ways, because not only did Judge Amy Berman Jackson address what happened last week, or at least tried to get to the bottom of what happened last week with the AG stepping in, AG Barr stepping in and asking for the judge to make the sentencing decision rather than taking the original recommendation of the prosecutors who secured the conviction. And so there were several different layers to this sentencing hearing. But as you noted at the end, the judge not going with the 7 to 9 year term that the prosecutors submitted as the original recommendation, but going with 3 years and 4 months. Still a significant amount of time for Roger Stone, someone who is a friend of the president, a confidant of the president, and has been for decades now, someone who considers himself a dirty trickster. And that was something that Judge Jackson referred to during this sentencing hearing. She said at one point, during this trial, Stone and his defense attorneys essentially argued, so what if I lied? Remember, he was accused of obstruction of justice and convicted of obstruction of justice, lying to congressional investigators and witness tampering, essentially threatening a witness. And during the court proceedings, Stone and his defense attorneys essentially saying, so what if I lied? Judge Jackson saying today, as she was handing down this sentence, truth still exists, the truth still matters. That's what she said just before sentencing him to 3 years and 4 months behind bars.
All right, Jeff Pegues, when you're outside that courtroom, we're going to wait to see if Roger Stone will address the media. We'll be standing by with the latest updates. I want to thank you very much. I want to turn to Daniel and Olivia. Daniel, do we get a sense if the president's happy with this sentencing? The president's refused to say if he'll pardon Stone. Do we think he might?
Well, we haven't heard reaction on this specific sentence. It's much less. It's like half of what the prosecutors had recommended initially before they backtrack on those recommendations after Bill Barr intervened and those prosecutors resigned from the case. But we have heard, according to the New York Times, that Trump has floated pardoning Stone, but that might have been assuming that he got a very tough sentence. 3 years for lying is still a lot, but it's not as much as he had been likely to get. And so that might mollify Trump a little bit.
We just saw live pictures there of Stone leaving the courthouse. Doesn't look like he's going to talk to reporters there. I do want to ask you, though, you actually, Daniel, have reporting on how Trump allies are targeting the Mueller team now. Can you explain kind of how all this is connected to the Stone case and its impact on the Justice Department specifically?
Yeah, so a lot of these conservative commentators who are sometimes friends with Donald Trump Jr. Or outside allies of the president who go on Fox News and are regularly on conservative outlets writing op-eds or on Twitter, they have all been attacking these prosecutors who used to work for Mueller. They claim they're biased, even though there's no evidence of that, and they want them to leave the Justice Department altogether. And so they are urging them to get investigated because they think that the Mueller investigation was biased, and so they want some retribution. And so this all kind of lines up with what Trump has been doing since his acquittal, which is trying to get some revenge against his enemies, perceived and real.
I want to turn to Olivia. Olivia, speaking of personnel changes, I want to talk to you about sort of what we're hearing about the president picking a new acting director of national intelligence, Richard Grenell, who's actually the current ambassador to Germany. What do we know about him? Why is this so controversial?
That's right, Rena. So Richard Grenell does currently serve as the U.S. ambassador to Germany. It's a post he's held since the spring of 2018. He's known to be an ally of the president, quite outspoken and offensive of Mr. Trump's policies on social media. As a former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the UN during the George W. Bush administration, he's kind of known among journalists and political circles, at least, as a real pugilist, someone who's really not going to back down from a fight. I would say the intelligence, congressional, and administration sources that I've spoken with about this since yesterday are reacting to his nomination with a mix of preliminary concern and kind of a wait-and-see attitude. It's true that Grenell's profile is a pretty significant departure from that of his predecessors. So Dan Coats, who served as the Trump administration's first DNI, was also ambassador to Germany, but he had a decade and a half of experience in Congress, to include 3 years on the Senate Intelligence Committee before that. So significant national security experience is a prerequisite of this role usually, and it has been a characteristic of those who've held it before. Of course, experience in the substance of intelligence is also preferable. But as some of my sources have pointed out, another crucial quality is having the trust of the president. If you don't have that, you can't advocate for the needs and the findings of the community itself. So one former senior intelligence official who actually served in the Trump administration that I spoke with this morning did express concern about things like leadership continuity and the potential for the politicization of intelligence with Grenell in the role. But this person also said, give it a minute. It's impossible to know just how he's going to adjust to its requirements. And for the good of the intelligence community, we just need to give him the chance to succeed at this time.
And Olivia, do we have a sense, is the White House going to make this permanent? Are they going to bring in someone else to have in the position as permanent? What do we know?
So as of a few hours ago, it does appear that it's temporary. Ambassador Grenell tweeted that he will not be the permanent nominee and that he's only going to be serving in an acting capacity. It's unknown for how long. Under the statute governing the interim role, he's going to need to be replaced or confirmed by about August or September. That could, of course, also happen sooner if the president announces somebody else. But if I could, just give you 3 quick reasons why having somebody on a permanent basis is important. One, the intelligence community is going through some absolutely tectonic shifts. If you think about the internet, the world's interconnectedness, technological advancements like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, they all mean that there's a fundamentally different threat landscape for the IC to contend with. And the DNI needs to be out in front leading a strategy to confront those shifts. 2, a crucial part of the DNI's work at this time is overseeing election security. And even though there's a number of agencies that are engaged on that issue, the DNI is tasked with coordinating a lot of those efforts so that we're prepared for whatever unknowns we're about to face in November. And 3rd, just quickly, this person needs to be able to answer to Congress and to the public. We are still waiting to see whether there will be a public hearing with intelligence leadership in the coming weeks or months. It's been an annual tradition for years. It's the one time that senior intelligence officials appear together in public and take these kind of accountability questions from lawmakers, Republicans and Democrats. And they get to state plainly, what intelligence assessments are on a particular issue, whether that's Iran, China, Russia, or North Korea. It's just not clear that that is going to happen anytime soon with a new acting DNI in the role.
Daniel, it's obvious, the intelligence community has been a bit cagey about this pick, but we also know that the White House, particularly President Trump, has had somewhat of a strained relationship with the intelligence community. How is this pick going to affect that relationship?
Yeah, these people are professionals, and so they will follow the chain of command. And so if they, I think there's kind of a wait-and-see attitude. A lot of them don't know Grenell. Most of the intelligence community staffers, unless they work in Germany, then they probably have not met Grenell, and they're a little suspicious. But I think they want to give him a shot to try to prove himself. It'll be interesting to see if he actually continues his Twitter personality, where he's a full-hearted supporter of Trump on social media, like he has as ambassador. The DNI role is much more behind the scenes, trying to coordinate the work of 16 intelligence agencies plus DNI to get them, to come to terms with our major threats these days, like Iran and North Korea. And Grenell doesn't have that background, but by all accounts, he knows how to please the president, and is also smart intellectually, and so that might help him. But he's going to have to put away his bulldog persona a little bit.
Olivia, you mentioned a little bit sort of about Capitol Hill. I'm curious, was Congress notified about this decision? Do they need to be notified? And what are you hearing about the reaction there?
So, Rita, my sources have told me, my congressional sources, that the relevant committees, which would be the House and Senate Intelligence Committees in particular, were not notified meaningfully in advance of this decision. It's not a necessity, but it is kind of a courtesy that the White House can extend to these decision makers who would ordinarily be involved in vetting a candidate. You know, this has prompted some criticism, particularly from Democrats, who say that this role at this moment is too important to continue filling on an acting basis. It's inappropriate, they also say, to deprive the Senate of its advice and consent role and its ability to vet candidates for a leadership post as big as this one 2 times in a row, because you had it with McGuire and now you will have it with Grinnell. Most Republicans, to include the Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Burr, have been, I would say, conspicuously quiet on the president's choice. That you could consider that a statement in itself. We did hear yesterday from the vice chairman, the Democrat from Virginia, Mark Warner, who said that, you know, essentially right now is just a critical time to have an experienced, objective, Senate-confirmed director in place, especially just given the range and gravity of security challenges that are facing the country, both domestically and abroad.
Daniel, I want to ask you about the president's schedule today. He's out west, he's fundraising, but it's not just about his re-election campaign. He's also trying to give some folks out there a boost. What do you know about his agenda today?
So he has made a focus of, he doesn't actually like to travel much in the first place. And so they had to convince him that, hey, if you do this 4-day stint, then you can stay at your hotel in Las Vegas, which is kind of funny. And so he reminds me of during the 2016 campaign, even if he was having a rally in the Midwest, he'd fly to New York to sleep in Trump Tower before getting on the plane again early in the morning to go out to campaign more. And so in California, he is working on issues like water, but it doesn't look like he is meeting with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. And so I think this is something, you had one White House aide, Joe Grogan, call California occupied territory, which got a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, it certainly did. I want to thank you both, Daniel Lippman and Olivia Gazis, for joining us.
Thank you.